Alright folks, 7 weeks of quarantine under our belt. For those of you who don't know, ever since this quarantine started, I've been making videos about movies I just loved growing up. Of course, these are, older movies, so I understand why these videos haven't been getting a lot of views. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only YouTube movie reviewer this is happening to. But I will be talking about Scoob when it comes out, because I've been looking forward to that one. And I'll also review Artemis Fowl when it comes out. I wasn't even planning on seeing it in theaters, but now that it's coming out on streaming service, I might as well. So we got those to look forward to. Until then though, let's talk about this movie. Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole. So Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole came out in September of 2010. It was like right in the beginning of 10th grade for me. It's a Warner Brothers animated movie. It's based off a series of books that I've never read or even heard of before this movie. But I remember seeing the trailers for this movie and thinking, that looks awesome. And I remember walking out of this movie going, that was awesome. I saw it in IMAX 3D, so it really popped out at me. It was really cool. So the story goes, there is Soren, voiced by Jim Sturgis. He's a young owl. He's a dreamer. He's got his head in the clouds because he's obsessed with the legend of the Guardians of Ga'Hoole, which is, a group of brave warriors. They fought great battles back in the day. Soren thinks the legends are real, whereas his older brother Clud does not. Clud's mindset is more grounded, but one day Soren and Clud are kidnapped. They're taken to St. Agiles, which is the home of the pure ones, aka the bad guys, and from there the story goes on. And I'll be honest, I watched this movie last night for the first time in a while, and it's not as awesome as I remember it being. I have to stress, it's still a good movie, but I did notice a couple of flaws, which I will get to later, because I still think the good in this movie does outweigh the bad. I mean, first off, the animation, holy goodness. This movie was directed by Zack Snyder of all people, and we all know him for being a very visual director and very stylistic. His earlier movies, before he went to DC, a lot of them during the action sequences, they would go into slow-mo for like no reason, it felt like. But in this movie, I actually feel it really works. But I mean, the level of detail and everything, it's really impressive for 2010. But just the aesthetic appeal, you see these big old landscape shots, they do kind of feel like Lord of the Rings. And the way they're colorized, you're like, yeah, you are noticing a lot of the Zack Snyder-isms in it. It is just a gorgeous movie, man. But also, the story is really good. It's a classic kid's story about how it's good to follow your dreams. And the sibling rivalry between Soren and Clud, I feel, is one of the strongest points of the movie. Because you really do get both sides. I mean, yeah, Soren's your main character, but everyone's rooting for Soren, Clud feels a little left out, because he's like, no one listens to me. Can't we all just be realistic? It's really good. It does make for some really good dialogue between Clud and Soren throughout the entire movie. To me, this was like the predecessor to Thor and Loki. You see both points of view, but you can clearly tell one of them is the right one, but you also feel sympathetic for the other one. It's good stuff. So the animation is just drop dead gorgeous. The action scenes are really well done. The characters are really fun. This new group of owls that Soren finds himself befriending, Gylfi, this little elf owl who ends up being his best friend, and Digger and Twilight, who are pretty much the comic relief, and I still think they're pretty funny. And there are a couple voices in this movie you're like, oh my god, I know that voice. You're like, whoa, is that Hugo Weaving voicing Soren's father? Yeah, that's the voice of Lord Elrond. Another one, holy crap, that's Jeffrey Rush voicing Lies of Keel. That's really cool in animated movies when you recognize voices. But after watching this movie last night, I was like, it's a bit more lighthearted than it probably should be. It's treated as a kid's movie because, it's an hour and a half long. It's an animated movie about owls based off a series of children's books. But there is some weird side of me that would have liked to have seen a PG-13 version of this movie that got rid of some of the comic relief and added a little more grittiness. I feel like a story like this would allow that. I would have liked to have seen an extended edition of this movie, like a 2-hour version or something, because there are also some parts of this movie that do feel a little rushed. Like, example, Clud and Soren, they haven't really learned how to fly yet. In this movie, it feels like it doesn't take that long for them to learn how to fly. It takes them like 10 minutes, and maybe some time has gone by in that 10 minutes of screen time, but it doesn't really feel that way. That's the biggest example of this movie kind of rushing the plot a little bit. I had heard that this movie makes an abomination of the books that it's based on. Like, it's nothing like the books, it slanders them, kind of like Aragon. But for this movie, I wouldn't know, because I never read the books. So I'm obliviously content on this movie. I never read the books, so I have nothing really to compare it to. So to me, the movie's just fine. In fact, it's pretty good. And the music, holy crap, the music in this movie is awesome. There's a really cool fanfare for the main theme. Dun 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 dun. To me, when I first saw this movie, the theme reminded me of a really good video game for the GameCube, it sounded like good title screen music for a GameCube video game. That, and it also sounds like the music from those Bionicle movies. Oh yeah, I rock those. And that's just never a bad thing. So in the end, Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole is still a pretty fun and enjoyable movie. Like I said, it is kind of rushed in some parts, and these days I could have gone for a little more grittiness, but I still love the characters, the voice acting is really good, the animation is beautiful, the music is awesome. It is a solid adventure for kids about following your dreams. That's a really important message. Chase your dreams, follow your passion, dream big, because it just might end up happening for you. That's a good mindset to have. I am bummed out that this movie never got a sequel, because the ending did leave it open for one. The voice actors who play Soren and Clud said they would come back if a sequel were to be made, so I think that's pretty cool. But at this point, there's no talk about one yet, and that does kind of bum me out. The movie's streaming on Netflix right now. If you have kids, I recommend watching it one night as a family. You'll have a good time. So, Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Have you read the books? Is it true that this movie makes an abomination out of them like the Aragon movie did? Would you also like to see a sequel one day? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.